America's at a crossroads. For 175 years, the Democrats and the Republicans have made a total mess of the American political system. Every country on the planet almost has some form of society-wide health care. The developed world has an economy that works, that benefits all of its citizens. In America, we have polarization. We have group politics. We have tribes battling for political office. And then when they get into political office, they turn right around and help their friends and supporters. The rest of America suffers. We can't go on like this. America's ready for a change. Let me give you some numbers. In the last month, polls have come out that shows us 85% of all American adults hate both the Democrats and the Republicans. They're not likely to vote for them. They downright hate the current political environment. If we look at registered Democrats, we're talking about 93% of registered Democrats do not want Joe Biden to run for president again. If you look at the Republican side, 60% of registered Republicans would like to see Donald Trump in jail. Everything I've just said clearly tells us America is fed up with the status quo and it's time for a change. More directly, why am I throwing my hat in the ring? I've got a pretty decent education. I've traveled the world. I've owned family businesses for 30 years. I've been in the trenches with the little guy. For my entire adult life, I've kept my eye on the political ball. I've looked at what works, what doesn't work. During the pandemic, I sat back and thought, what's a good way to spend the rest of my life? Probably like millions of Americans. 55 years old, I really don't want any more small businesses. I've had plenty there. I was looking for a new project, a massive project, a project that was going to bring out the best, not only in me, but the people around me. Over time, I came to the conclusion that there really is no other person in America with this background that can establish an independence party and bring America a new political choice in our arenas. We're problem solvers, solving problems. Great question. The Independence Party, we're playing off the characteristics of the American electorate. So if we look at the middle portion of American politics, we see that the vast majority of our fellow citizens reside in the middle. They're not extreme left, they're not extreme right. They are looking for practical solutions to everyday problems. They compromise, they give and take. They understand it can't all be their way. So folks who are in the middle are looking for pragmatic solutions. Most of all, they want problems solved. They're not people that are likely to go out to the streets and fight for issues. They're raising families, they're running businesses, they're doing their jobs, but they feel like their voice is not represented. So America needs a party from the middle. And this is in essence the Independence Party.
Top of your head.
Well, one of the big goals we want to achieve, we're going to create 30 million new entrepreneurs across the United States. This one program has 40 years worth of history behind it. But essentially, we've created a system where folks pretty much have to find employment to support themselves and their family. This is a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, everybody was self-employed. Granted, they were mostly on farms and small businesses in the city, but what we want to create in the United States, we want to create local production, We want to create local jobs in the production sector. Now, of course, that 30 million entrepreneur program will range in terms of the number of businesses. On the one hand, it may be the local retail repair shop. On the other hand, it may be a robotics company and everything in between. But the focus of this program is to create self-supporting Americans that don't need to rely upon a job, that chart their own destiny. That's one of the major economic programs for the Independence Party. Another program we need to implement, let's talk about health care. The Republicans want to leave it all in the private insurance hands. The Democrats want the state to pay for everything. So this has been going on for decades, this battle. Everyone else has some form of basic health care for the entire society. We're talking about Western Europe, we're talking about Canada, we're talking about East Asia. We are the only ones in the developed world that does not have basic primary health care for the entire population. We want that system. We want basic primary health care for everybody. Now, the interesting thing about this topic is it's actually creating a bigger health care sector. Why? Very simple. If people are confident that they can go off to their primary care physician and get a checkup, get some tests done, figure out what's wrong with their body, then the result is we're going to have more Americans going to the doctors early, and they're going to figure out what's wrong with them. Well, what we will do is we will keep the specialist sections of the healthcare industry. We'll leave those for the insurance companies to finance. So what we've done is we're increasing the number of healthcare consumers, because people aren't afraid to go to the doctor anymore because they're not afraid it's going to bankrupt them. So they go get checked out, and then when there is something like they need a surgery or they need specialized health care, something that's a little more complicated, the insurance companies will cover that. So the insurance companies will benefit. So we've increased the healthcare pie. We've provided for basic health care. We have made the very expensive healthcare results less likely. So that's a second initiative, which is really important. And as you can see right there, that's pure compromise. Why in the world this wasn't done decades ago is really nothing more than very selfish, very narrow-minded Democrats and Republicans looking at that issue. So those are two signature issues that we have to address, but there are many other issues. So for example, we're still in the domestic front. Let's look at education. Education is the key to the future of America. We need every high school student in this country to graduate from high school. But you know what kind of system we have right now? Let me tell you what kind of system we have right now. Well, people graduate from high school and then they are literally thrown out into the streets. Most of them have no money in their pockets, and they're supposed to go get a job. Maybe if they're lucky, they'll get a job at the local fast food joint, or they're going to go to college where they're going to take on a huge amount of debt, and they're fending for themselves. But there are also negatives to that. One is we still have an unacceptable dropout rate. We also have a lot of these high school students that wind up in the streets, and then they take a wrong turn and they wind up in the drug world or spending a life in struggle because they're never quite able to make it. So we need to introduce a reward system. We want our high school students to graduate. We want to give them some kind of let's start life properly monetary reward. It will focus their minds all throughout their primary and secondary school years. They can take that money, use it for college. They can use it to establish themselves with an apartment, for example. They wind up having something when they go into adulthood when they're 18 years old. So in essence, we're using money to encourage a better educational outcome. What we have right now, we have Democrats and Republicans, they don't really care. You know, they're not thinking about issues like that. So this kind of mindset where, you know, while everyone takes care of their own and forget about the people who fall between the cracks, that is telling us that all throughout life, we are increasing the cost to society by not helping people become self-providers. So those are just three main points, but like you said, there are hundreds of issues that we have to deal with, and there are dozens of major campaign points. But let me just finish up that question with one other remark. When we increase the number of entrepreneurs across America, 30 million, that's going to cost some upfront investment money, and we're going to restructure the SBA to provide that seed money for the new entrepreneurs. But overall, it's going to reduce the demand for government services because now we have more people in the society taking care of themselves through through their own business entrepreneurial activities. Not only that, we're increasing the tax base. So we're decreasing the demand upon government services. We're increasing the size of the economic pie. We're increasing the size of the tax base, which means ultimately that everyone gets to pay less taxes. So we need a totally different approach. What I'm going to call a practical approach, an independence approach, a middle of the road, let's solve the problems approach. So when you spend your life in the world of small business, you're up close and personal with your customers, with your employees, with your friends, with your social network. When you travel the world, which I spent 10 years of my youth traveling the world, I graduated from law schools in both England and the United States, for example, as well as Hong Kong. And you learn how other societies structure themselves. You see what works, you see what doesn't work. But universally, societies that have very high numbers of entrepreneurs, and America once had a much higher number of entrepreneurs per population, those are the most successful societies. They're also the happiest societies. They're also the societies where you have less of the extremes. Sure, you don't have 125,000 homeless people in Los Angeles, for example, but in those societies, you also don't have the top 1% of the population owning 45% of the economy. So a system that does a better job of taking care of its entrepreneurs will see the extremes disappear and way more benefits going to the society as a whole. It's a life experience, and it's also being curious. So I can think over my travels and my entrepreneurial career, you know, I've been a lifelong reader of The Economist magazine. I have looked at the news every single day of my life, going all the way back to young childhood, as long as I can remember. I used to deliver papers as a boy, for example. That was my first job, and I always took one for myself to read. You know, so I just always had a curious mind. And I think after 55 years of living life as a curious observer and analyzer, you come to this position. And we realize we have to address these issues now, and the consequences of not addressing these issues are catastrophic for not only America, but for the whole world. Getting to know the American public is critical to any presidential campaign. And it's absolutely true, I have done my very best to live a quiet life, except for the people that are around me in the business world and the family world. The way we're going to solve the problem is we have put together a 150 city comedic campaign fundraising tour. We're going to kick that off in January of 2023, and we're going to run that all the way up to November 3rd of 2024. So to talk a little more about that, I've recruited 6 of the country's best comedians. We're working with Hollywood, we're working with movie producers, we are working with folks in the live performing entertainment industry, and we've put together a show. And the show is half educational, half get to know Robert Quigley, and of course in the lawyering world we got many halves, and we have another half that is pure and simple entertainment and fun. So the whole idea is we're going to demonstrate to the American public what has been going wrong with the Democrat and Republican parties. That's going to be the entertainment part of the show. It's going to draw upon live current events, historical events, and it's going to be couched in humor. So it's going to be entertaining. And then once we finish with that part of the show, we're going to do a typical political campaign stump speech. I'll come out on the stage, I'll talk to the audience, and we will address local issues. We will show the local population how these national issues tie into their lives. And then we will end the program with about a 30-minute question and answer session. So the comedians will walk around the audience with microphones, and people will be able to ask questions, and then I will address their concerns. It's about a 2-hour show. And like I say, it's going to be at least 150 cities. In addition to that, we have a Hollywood production company that's going to turn that whole live performance, all of those events, they're going to turn it into a documentary. And then this documentary, it actually won't be released until the election results and are published. And when we win the White House, then the last scene of that documentary will probably be in the Oval Office. Now, in addition to that, we are dealing with a potential movie. So some of the Hollywood producers that we're talking to are thinking very seriously that maybe we should go one step higher, because no time in American history has anyone made a movie about how to put together a campaign, how one actually goes about implementing and executing your question, which was, how do you make yourself known to the American people? So essentially, we've got those 3 projects on the table: the comedy tour, which is also fundraising, the documentary, and a potential movie. But in addition to that, we're also going to conduct a series of dinner speeches around the country. So as you know, Tyler, I graduated from the University of Cambridge, and we have an alumni association all across America, all across the world for that matter. And then, of course, I'm in several business groups because of my entrepreneurial career. So we're going to set up dinners across the country in the 2023 and 2024 time period, and we're basically I'm going to be the keynote speaker. So I will go and address the local crowd, and it's the same process. I deal with the local concerns, I get the feedback, their information gets incorporated into our campaign, and then finally, we have already chatted with the national media organizations, and they are very much interested in following the comedy tour, for example. So we expect that every single performance, we will have the national media reporters in attendance. So it's a 2-year process. It's a 2.5-year process when you count putting the campaign together. But essentially, when you boil it down to its most simplest form, that's what we do in 2022 to meet 340 million American people. It's okay, absolutely, because there's no way I'm going to take these 2.5 years of my life at 55 years old and turn this into a chore of slavery. No, that's not my personality. I mean, I'm going to do everything I can to have as much fun as I can, and the people around me have also put their lives on hold. They have changed the course of their life direction. So as a team, there has to be an element of fun in it. So of course, you know, the movie, a cynic can very easily say, oh man, this guy's just about making money. Well, yes and no. I mean, the reality is the Federal Election Commission does have very strict rules about campaign finance. So this is not an exercise of going out and enriching myself. Our fundraising goal is to bring in at least $1 billion. But the rules of politics and elections, you know, it's crazy. It says that I can go out and raise that $1 billion, or let's just say it's even a bigger number. Let's say I get $2 or $3 billion. But I cannot spend 1 penny of those campaign contributions on myself. I can feed my dog if I call my dog the mascot of the Independence Party, but it's actually not an exercise in enriching myself. It's all about funding the Independence Party, which we want to continue long after I'm gone, but we also have to fund the presidential campaign. So the Senate can make their snide remarks, and of course, tiny bit of truth, but then there's the reality. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because if you look at the donor behavior across America, most people are turned off by politics. There's no question about it. And people do not see any amount of donation as a good investment or good use of their money. But the amount of money that's needed to win the White House and perhaps win some Senate and House seats for the Independence Party along the way, the amount of money that we have to raise in a 2.5-year period is so large that we have to approach this from a point of view where we can engage in very big audience types of events. That's the only way we're going to raise the amount of money that's needed. Now, having said that, you will read between the lines. You'll realize that we're not relying on a dozen or 2 dozen very wealthy donors. I mean, if Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Bezos wants to give us $1 billion check, we'll take it and say thank you very much. But we're not counting on that. We're going to go out and meet as many people as we can, and that's why we're engaging in these types of big audience activities. Because realistically, it's the only way to raise the $1 billion in a 2-year period. We've had a varied small business career. I have owned everything from language schools to retail stores, retail workshops, distribution businesses, craft show businesses. We've owned a pizza shop. We have owned a law business. I trained as a lawyer. And what else have we done? We've owned a production business, a publication business. We wrote books, we published them, and distributed them to the educational community. So that's, in a nutshell, the types of businesses that I've owned. In a bigger picture, we have a family investment office where we engage in Wall Street trading and Wall Street investing. I've been a lifelong participant in Wall Street, but during the pandemic period, I was way more active in our Wall Street activities than the previous parts of my life. For most of my life, I've been the typical mutual fund investor. You write your check once a month and you get your little piece of mutual fund and it grows. And then after college, I worked on Wall Street in a couple of internships. I was a research analyst and I was a manager in the research department. And then, like I say, during the pandemic, I was actually a full-time manager of our family investment office. So that's kind of what I've done in a nutshell. I've had several employee jobs in my much younger days, though. So I did government internships. I did an internship at the Department of Labor, did an internship at the Justice Department. So I did the typical young guy employee types of jobs. And but when you compare everything that I've done, the most exciting and rewarding economic activities were, of course, the entrepreneurial companies. Because when you're a business owner, everything is on one's own shoulders. You succeed or you fail. There's nobody to blame. You either do it or you don't. And every single day you wake up in the morning, you solve problems, and you keep on doing it until you go to bed, and you get up the next day and you do it again. The reason for bringing entrepreneurs into the administration, well, first off, every president that lands in the White House has roughly 4,000 senior executive positions that he must fill across the federal government. Historically, these positions have mostly gone to other politicians. They have gone to other folks in either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They have gone to the big donors in that campaign. It's absolutely nuts. Look where it has gotten us over all of these decades. So my attitude is an entrepreneur is a kind of person who will dig into the problem, drill down into the details, understand what is going on with that particular issue, that particular program, that particular case, and they will sort through any number of solutions or outcomes, and then they will pick the best one, which generally will provide the most benefit in that particular case, and that's the solution that will be implemented. So another way to think about this, you know, an engineer is also somebody who will solve problems from the beginning of their day until the end of their day. You know, scientists are people that do the very same thing. What we've been producing in Washington, D.C. are folks that are totally in a different camp. You know, it's not about putting your finger in the wind and to see where the wind blows. Most of the problems that we are facing are going to attract both support and anger from different parts of the society. I mean, take healthcare, for example. You know, the insurance companies are like, man, we're going to lose all that primary healthcare business. We don't like that. So they're going to go pay lobbyists. They're going to fight against that program. But then the smarter folks in the industry are going to realize, well, hold on a minute. He's probably going to double or triple the size of American healthcare because now everyone can go get checked up and they're not going to have to worry about, you know, paying a huge bill for a basic medical service. So the entrepreneur is not a guy who cares about the direction of the wind. He's a guy or gal that cares about how we're going to get the most good with the solutions that we put on the table.